My name is Faye, and I work at a doctor's office in a college. I got married to a guy named Stephen, thinking it would be the beginning of a new chapter, but things didn't turn out as expected, and our marriage ended quickly. Stephen works as a manager at a hardware store, and he seemed caring and sure of himself when we met. He proposed, and I said yes without thinking twice, believing he was dependable. After we got married, Stephen left his parents' house to live with me. Despite our hectic schedules, Stephen and I somehow managed to align our days off and were excitedly planning our honeymoon. Just the thought of it brought us joy, and I felt grateful for marrying Stephen. However, things began to change slowly. We lived in a 3-bedroom apartment that was only 2 years old. It was nice, but a bit far from the city and not overly luxurious, making it affordable. Considering all of this, I decided to take the plunge and buy it. Living there was convenient, and Stephen wasn't one for luxury, so it suited us well. Then, one day, Stephen mentioned, "My mom and sister want to visit our new place tomorrow, so I invited them." My first thought was that he should have talked to me about the date first. Tomorrow, Stephen had the day off, but I had to work. While his decisiveness was usually a strength, sometimes it stung when he didn't consider my feelings. "I'll be at work, is that okay?" I asked. Stephen reassured me, "Sure, we'll just take a quick look around the house, nothing more." Satisfied, I left for work, assuming that was the plan. However, when I returned home that evening, I was greeted by a lively atmosphere. The house smelled wonderful, and upon entering the living room, I found Stephen, my mother-in-law, and sister-in-law enjoying themselves with food and drinks. "What's happening?" I asked in surprise. My mother-in-law, a bit tipsy, welcomed me warmly, and my sister-in-law complimented the house, albeit with a hint of envy. Stephen seemed to be having a good time, while I felt left out. "I thought you were coming for a house tour, not dinner," I said, trying to keep the peace despite feeling blindsided by the unexpected gathering. I was feeling a bit upset, but Stephen brushed it off with a smile, saying my mom and sister mentioned they had time. So we figured, why not have dinner? His focus seemed to be on their needs, not mine, and I wanted to express that. It's not that I don't like having my in-laws over, but I don't want to feel like a guest in my own home, I explained. However, Stephen casually mentioned, since my dad passed away, it's usually just the two of them. They could use a change of scenery now and then. His carefree attitude made it hard to argue. My mother-in-law chimed in, praising Stephen's kindness and implying that he was taking care of me. I wanted to defend myself, saying, I work and contribute too, But I decided to let it go. After all, they had bought groceries and cooked the meal themselves. I didn't want to start a conflict over a family dinner. I was taken aback when my mother-in-law made a shocking comment, saying, "This fridge is filled with good meat, and high-quality meat is truly delicious." It took me a moment to process her words. It was clear that they were using our groceries. Even the snacks and drinks my sister-in-law was enjoying were the ones we had purchased. "Didn't you buy these yourselves?" I asked, hoping for an explanation. My mother-in-law simply replied, "Well, if there's plenty in the fridge, why bother going shopping? It's such a hassle," showing no remorse. Then, to add insult to injury, she announced, "I'm tired now, so if you want something to eat, Faye, you'll have to make it yourself." I was furious at the audacity of the situation, but I managed to mask my emotions with a forced smile. "Is that so? I'll take care of my own meal then," I said calmly before retreating to my room, struggling to contain my anger. As I closed the living room door, a wave of frustration caused it to slam shut louder than intended. I overheard my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's hushed conversation, questioning my demeanor. Is she always this rough? Is everything okay? They wondered. My sister-in-law added, even in such a nice house, I worry Faye might break something. Stephen nonchalantly reassured them, I'll talk to her later. She's probably just tired from work. Despite their chatter, they left without tidying up. Later, Stephen came to my room, gently scolding me. Why the irritation? It's not fair to my mom. Feeling overwhelmed by the intrusion and the mess left behind, I expressed my frustration. Stephen attempted to calm me down, promising to handle the cleaning himself. Though I remained skeptical, I chose to let it go, not wanting to escalate the situation further. I tried to see the intrusive family visit as part of Stephen's family closeness and regained my composure. With our honeymoon approaching in a month, I didn't want any tension to spoil our relationship. I convinced myself that such incidents wouldn't repeat. All I needed to focus on now was our upcoming honeymoon to lift my spirits. However, the honeymoon turned out to be filled with misfortune. We planned to spend 3 nights in Alaska. Although I wouldn't have minded an overseas trip, Stephen preferred to keep it simple. He felt staying within the country was sufficient, so we settled on this plan. The hotel we booked was nice, and we enjoyed the local cuisine, hot springs, and the breathtaking northern lights, creating beautiful memories. As our delightful journey came to an end as scheduled, I felt a twinge of sadness. We discussed the possibility of planning another trip someday. As we were nearing home, a sudden thought crossed my mind. Did I remember to lock the bathroom window before we left? We live on the 4th floor of an apartment building, and the bathroom window is small, so I doubted the possibility of a break-in. However, the thought popped into my head unexpectedly. When I mentioned it to Stephen, he brushed it off with a casual remark. "It'll be fine. My mom and sister are there." I was taken aback. "Wait, my in-laws are at our house now." I wasn't aware of this. Stephen calmly explained, "Oh, didn't I mention? They offered to clean up while we're away. It's really helpful, dust piles up after a few days," he said cheerfully. Realizing that he had given my mother-in-law the house keys without informing me left me feeling upset once again. From that moment on, I barely spoke to Stephen and hurried home faster than usual. Upon returning home, my worries about what was happening in our house grew. As I entered the living room, my fears were confirmed. They were having yet another gathering. Dishes made from our food were laid out, and my mother-in-law greeted us casually, asking if we had a good time. I was in no mood to respond properly. She mentioned something about cleaning up, but the place looked even messier. To make matters worse, there were more bags from my in-laws. Seeing all this, I couldn't contain my frustration any longer. "That's enough. What do you think you're doing? Please, go home. This is our house, and it's a problem if you continue to act as you please," I blurted out. My mother-in-law's response was dismissive. "Why are you so upset? This is Stephen's house, so there shouldn't be any problem with what we, his family, do," she said, with my sister-in-law adding an arrogant remark. "Exactly, Faye. If anything, we have more right to be here than you." Their logic baffled me. Returning home, I couldn't shake off my worries about what might be happening in our house. Stepping into the living room confirmed my fears. They were hosting yet another gathering. The sight of dishes, likely filled with our food, lined up only added to my frustration. "Oh, you're back. Did you have a good time?" My mother-in-law greeted us casually. I was in no mood to respond properly. She mentioned something about tidying up, but the place looked even messier than before. And to make matters worse, there were even more bags from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. It felt like the final straw. "Enough. What's going on? Please, go home. This is our house, and it's becoming a problem if you continue to act like this," I blurted out, unable to contain my frustration. My mother-in-law's response was dismissive. "Why are you so upset? I have no right to say that. This is Stephen's house, so there shouldn't be any problem with what we, his family, do," she retorted, with my sister-in-law chiming in arrogantly. "Exactly, Faye. If anything, we have more right to be here than you." Their mindset left me utterly baffled. "I'm contributing to this house too, It's my home as well, so I expect to be consulted," I asserted, feeling a surge of determination. There was a sense of urgency to speak up before things escalated further. But what truly spurred me on was the unexpected revelation. "Faye, you need to stop. How dare you speak to my family like that? We're all going to live here together from now on. Don't be so selfish." Stephen's words left me momentarily stunned. Living with these in-laws? Was this decided without my knowledge again? The realization hit me, and I couldn't help but retort. "Why do you make decisions without consulting me? Can't you involve me in the discussion? Who's being selfish here?" This is absurd. The cheerful atmosphere from our honeymoon trip had vanished, replaced by tension filling the room. However, it was Stephen who, as always, diffused the situation. "Enough. If you dislike living here so much, Faye, you can leave," he stated, seemingly trying to end the argument. But his words had the opposite effect on me. They helped me calm down, but deep down, I knew I couldn't continue living with them anymore. If that's the case, there's no point in staying with Stephen and the others. I could have questioned Stephen's remark, "Are you sure about that?" But I refrained. My desire to avoid further conflict outweighed any curiosity. So with a casual grin, I said, "All right, got it. I'll be out of here soon." My smirk may have puzzled my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but they'd understand eventually. Afterward, I swiftly packed only the essentials and left. Stephen's parting words were, "Take some time to cool off." But I was already calm and had no intention of returning. Despite his hopes, I made arrangements to stay with my parents temporarily, initiated divorce proceedings, and began searching for a new place to live. Although Stephen attempted to reach out a few times, I ignored his calls, preoccupied with sorting out various matters. After about 2 months, I had settled into my new place. Realizing I still had belongings at the house I shared with Stephen, I decided to answer his call for the first time in a while. It was clear from his panicked tone that he was desperate. "Faye, where are you? Please come back," he pleaded urgently. It seemed Stephen thought I was going to return. Remembering my decision, I responded firmly, "No, I'm not coming back. In fact, I've already filed for divorce and consulted a lawyer. Let's discuss the property division." He was taken aback. "Divorce? Please not that. I can't handle it right now," he begged, growing even more frantic. I wasn't surprised by his reaction. I had anticipated it. When I asked what was wrong, he confessed, "I'm broke. I'm drowning in debt, so please come back soon." It wasn't unexpected. Stephen's income wasn't substantial. I think he earned around $2,000 a month. Yet, our condo's monthly mortgage was also $2,000. I was contributing $1,500, leaving him with just $500. I earned over 3 times his salary, so financial strain wasn't an issue for me. That's why I covered all the other expenses like utilities and groceries. Even our honeymoon had to be modest because he claimed to have no money. Eventually, I realized it wasn't about expensive tastes. He simply didn't have the income. So when I left, he had to shoulder all the financial responsibilities alone. The condo was in his name, and the payments came from his account. Once I left, he lost the $1,500 I used to contribute monthly. Adding to his financial burden, his jobless mother-in-law and sister-in-law were living with him. It was only natural for me to be upset when he made decisions about the house without consulting me or casually used things from the fridge. With just his salary, they wouldn't make it through a month, and drowning in debt seemed inevitable. My mother was furious. She asked, "Why did you kick Faye out? Come back home right away and do something." I was speechless. It seemed his mother and sister were under the mistaken impression that he earned a decent living because of his title as a store manager. But the harsh reality was that the title didn't necessarily translate into a high salary. We bought a fairly decent condo, and they completely believed Stephen contributed more financially. It's sad, but there's no other word for it than foolish. To make matters worse, it turns out his mother-in-law, having exhausted all her late husband's assets, ended up penniless in my home. She and her daughter had been living in a rented apartment, but it seems they terminated the lease properly. What a family, right? There are moments when I'm embarrassed to have any connection with them. Now, I'm eager to finalize our divorce as soon as possible. Just proceed with the divorce proceedings with your lawyer, then we'll discuss the financial aspects, I told Stephen. His relieved response was, "Really? Okay, I just need to fill out the paperwork with my lawyer and send it back to the court, right?" It sounded like he had been rescued. Our divorce went smoothly. When I visited our previous home to collect my belongings, Stephen, in front of his mother and sister, exclaimed, "Phew, you saved me, Faye. I'm already $10,000 in debt, and if things continue, it'll increase by another $5,000 this month." I was shocked at how quickly his debts had piled up. Apparently, his mother and sister have terrible spending habits. Despite this, they shamelessly rely on my finances. So I suggested, how about your mother and sister start working? If all 3 of you work, you might manage somehow, right? Stephen and his mother were taken aback. "Aren't you going to help us out?" "What do you mean by that?" Stephen asked. I calmly replied, "What do I mean? That should be my question. Why should I foot the bill for your living expenses? Earn your own keep." I never promised to pay. I said I'd consider it. "So I found a solution for you to sustain yourselves here." They all erupted into protests, exclaiming, "This wasn't the agreement." "Are you even our daughter-in-law?" I retorted, "I'm not your daughter-in-law anymore. Good luck." With that, I got into my car and left my former home. After some time, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law reluctantly began seeking employment, but their laziness hindered their progress. Meanwhile, debts kept accumulating and living expenses soared. Despite their financial struggles, they maintained extravagant lifestyles, and Stephen's debt only grew. Eventually, he resorted to borrowing from shady sources, living in constant fear of debt collectors. In contrast, I could finally use my hard-earned money for myself, indulging in hobbies and travel. Leading a fulfilling life boosted my motivation at work. One day, a colleague approached me saying, "You seem to be glowing lately, Faye." He was someone who had listened to my grievances about Stephen. This encounter led to us dating, further enriching my daily life.